I grew up among people who didn't care about philosophy, and people around me when I was a kid saw philosophy as something for lazy people, useless people, people who don't want to do a thing. And being raised this way, I developed notion that the self is not important, because when you live in a highly materialistic society, the self get discriminated against all the time, and therefore I never understood how important this voice within me. I always asked myself questions. I always knew what this voice needed, what should I do and how I should use this voice, but I always ignore it. Seems like I learned to ignore this voice all the time, and I was asking why I ignore it for so long. And then you will ignore it if you don't know the importance of this voice. You just think of it as a noise on the background. That's what I thought about my voice within me, the self that I never understood. And since I wasn't trained to understand, to learn about it through practice of certain traditions, of certain rituals, or even just education, I just ignore this voice. And now I'm slowly rediscovering this voice, now slowly understanding the importance of the self. And it's very simple now, how you can perceive the world accurately if you cannot perceive the self within you. Because everything you see around yourself, you perceive it through the self. The self itself makes some sense out of your perception. And if you don't know the self, if you ignore the self, then what exactly you see and how exactly you perceive the world? You perceive the world through perception of others. That's why you become enslaved by fashion, by trends, by other people's opinion. Because if you don't have the self, you have other people's self, and you mirror in each other, and life becomes just imitation of imitators with no self. That's what I'm starting to learn, because to live properly, I have to have the self, because the self is supposed to tell me, supposed to direct me, this voice within me that tells me where I should stop and what I shouldn't do. And I should trust this voice, I should listen this voice, because if you don't trust your own self, who can you trust? And for years, I couldn't understand that. And I felt shame, I felt embarrassment after making mistakes, after behaving against this voice within me. But I thought the shame and embarrassment was part of normality. I was trying to normalize as hard as I could. But it's not, it's just the directions, it's just the points, it's just the right way to live. But then again, if culture around you celebrates wrong things, you have to celebrate those things as well. Because you need directions, you need guidance. And if you don't get guidance, you're just in the mercy of the mob, in the mercy of the culture, on the mercy of those things around you that tempt your biology. Because the voice within me always advised me against biology, always advised me toward the idea of proper sacrifice, which I couldn't understand before. Even the notion of proper sacrifice I learned from Jordan Peterson. I never knew before of this idea of proper sacrifice because I thought it's some religious nonsense. But when I heard this from Jordan Peterson, it stuck with me, and I tried to learn through his lectures why it's affected me, why I tried to understand it, why I keep thinking about it again and again and again and again. Suddenly I realized that you cannot achieve anything without proper sacrifice, because proper sacrifice gives you the idea of how you have to live and why the voice within you is incredibly important. And this idea of proper sacrifice makes you sacrifice your biological urges, makes you to sacrifice hedonistic lifestyle. Because everything like our hedonistic lifestyle is incredibly damaging for our psyche. That's what we are so depressed. We're depressed because we go against the self, and you cannot bribe the self. I can try. I can go, for example, find some job that I hate, but that pays good, and try to bribe the self. I can buy, for example, an expensive car to feel some importance, to feel certain pride, but the self is still gonna scream against this. You cannot silence it. You can buy a lot of stuff, you can drown in this stuff, but it's not gonna silence the self that it's impossible to bribe. And this dissonance within us in a highly materialistic society create generation of depressed people who have no goal, have no meaning. In some sense, we even now demonize the idea of dream. Because if I have a dream, I'm somehow naive. But I still have a dream, and I still believe that I can achieve whatever I want, one step at a time. I just have to listen carefully what exactly I want. There's strange wants within me, like there's the idea from the self, this internal dream I always wanna have, I wanna achieve, I always wanted to achieve. And there's biological wants that nothing else but act upon my impulses and find satisfaction, instant satisfaction. That's what you have to always balance in between those two edges. And of course you have to listen to the self, because the self knows exactly what you need. You have to subjugate your biology. You have to subjugate your body. Otherwise your body subjugate the self. And subjugating the self, your body will place you in depression that would lead you to hell, to the bottomless pit where nothing but darkness and slow biological demise, where you cannot stop satisfying your urges, even knowing that the satisfaction will never bring you satisfaction. It's like something that impossible to satisfy. That's what our biology is. You try to satisfy, and you seem satisfied for a second, then you need something else to satisfy. While the self, when you follow properly to the self, you achieve meaning. You follow what matters. You aim up. You try to find the truth about yourself. That's what I'm trying to do. I try to find truth about myself. I try to position myself against the world and within the world. And I try to anchor myself to something that makes sense, to build the center. That's what happens is when you start changing yourself, you find yourself in a desert where you have to wander until your vision clears good enough for you to see who you truly are. And once your vision is clear, and once you see who you truly are, you start build the walled garden of Eden around yourself through the skills that you learn. And then once you build this walled garden of Eden, you start discovering your paradise within those walls that protects you from intruders, from people with no self who try to steal your ability to live the way you think is right for you. Because it's strange about us as people, we always try to tell others that their life is incorrect while don't know how to live ourselves. That's why I'm most concentrated about myself, about the self, because nobody knows how to live. You take people like, for example, I really respect and love Jordan Peterson because you can see he's struggling with his own idea of the self, with his own idea of proper sacrifice. He's not even lectures, he lives this idea, and you see the way his life goes. Because that's how you learn. You learn through other people, how they learn through other people. It's like a chain. We learn through each other. But we only can learn if we discover first the self, because the self tells you what to do. It even tells me now what kind of book I have to reread. It's funny because I read many times Viktor Frankl's The Man's Search for Meaning, and suddenly I wanted to read it again out of the blue. And when I read maybe fourth time this book, I discovered something new that I never discovered before. And when I feel this certain fear of sacrificing so many things for my dream, I realize I don't even make a tiny sacrifice compare what happened to Viktor Frankl, who lost everything, but what he had is himself. And since he survived and himself survived, he could accomplish much more after the hell he went through. And then my next book was, I read recently, The User Illusion, about you as a body that not in control of it, like our mind inside a car that is unable to control, but only to slam the brakes. Because, your mind have second behind of your body, and in some sense, your decision were made without you, without your full awareness. And what you have to do, you have to learn to slam on the brakes if those decisions are incorrect. It's fascinating. And now I begin reading another book. It's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. This book is about a man who got obsessed with the quality and in some sense went crazy. And this work now affects me differently because I suddenly realize the point of the self. Because we need to learn the importance of rediscovering the self. There's nothing else in the world but the self that you must nourish. Because through the self you see the world. You don't see the world otherwise. Through the self. And we all have two options. Or you continue developing the self, nourish the self, or you will become the reflection of the selves of others, or even worse, very strange imitations of the others that don't even exist, because now we try to imitate the self of others that we see online. It means we imitate artificial version of the selves of others, or even worse, AI version of the selves of others. And we're losing everything. And that's why now especially the self is incredibly important, because you have to preserve your continuity throughout your life, but you cannot preserve your continuity without having the self. And that's why I'm wandering in the desert with those books, trying to understand the self, because through this understanding, I'm rebuilding myself, I'm rewiring my brain, trying to change something within me I don't like. And to learn what you don't like, and to accept what you don't like, and to stop lying to yourself about what you don't like, you have to trust the self. Because if you don't trust the self, you cannot trust to no one. Because all trust starts with yourself. Once you trust the self, you have confidence in you and in your judgment. And once you have confidence within you and your judgment, you can trust other people. And then you start learning about other people. But you're the one who select knowledge. You're the one who process information. And you're the one who apply this information toward yourself. But to be able to apply this information and this knowledge and this learning to your own self, you have to have self, and to have self, you have to start trusting this little voice within you that usually tells you about the right and wrong within you and your life.